Most kids grow up playing with toy trucks. Nicholas Lubenow grew up around the real thing. After earning his degree in supply chain management from Marquette, by the way, and building a career as an attorney advising businesses, he's now stepping into the leadership role at Lubenow Companies, the company his father actually built. So, what's it like taking the wheel of the family trucking business, and where does he see the industry heading? Let's dive in and check it out. Obviously, I've met your dad and the Lubenow team. We've DPF Guys has used Lubenow to do some shipping,
Yeah,
and was pleased but not surprised that the experience was smooth and professional and and everything else. And
good.
that seems to be something that your dad has was really a stickler for right from the beginning.
Yep.
You definitely have come from a good foundation. I'm from Wisconsin as well. Grew up in Appleton, went to Xavier High School, all that type of stuff.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
my father also ran a business out of the home for me, so I kind of grew up around that, and so a similar background there. But so I am one of the owners of DPF Guys, and with a shop in Atlanta, it's kind of um, our flagship location, which we're testing all the processes and everything, and ultimately hoping to grow with multiple locations situated in key trucking spots so that we can better serve the trucking industry in this emissions business that can be such a nuisance for
Oh,
many,
yeah.
many people. And so funny thing is, my background is in software, boutique hotel, martini lounge, banquet space. So when the opportunity came up to do something in an industry that I had no experience with or knowledge of in a location I've never been for any long period of time, I thought that sounds like a terrible idea. Let's do it. And so here I am.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where the best ideas are born of, right? You just got to
and
take it.
exactly. And I think all of my my background is has helped technology and problem solving and customer service from you know owning a hospitality business has all come together very nicely into what I'm doing, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and just really enjoy taking care of people, and kind of flipping the script on many people's experiences with as truck drivers. They sometimes have kind of the short end of the stick in many ways. Everything from, you know, dispatch to regulation to, breakdowns and et cetera. It always seems like they're the ones that kind of suffer the most. And so it's just like, hey, I'm gonna treat these people like I would want to be treated. I treat them like somebody coming to the front desk in a very nice hotel. And, what's the downside? There is none. It,
Right.
but all right. So uh, you went to law school. What did you go to Marquette by any chance? What
So I went to Marquette for undergrad, operations and supply chain management, knowing that eventually this day was coming down the line. And then I graduated pretty young, so I knew I had to kind of go and get some more experience and do something else before I kind of made this leap into the business. So then, yeah, Marquette Law was the plan from there, and it's kind of how the journey got started.
well, because this will be viewed in other areas beyond Wisconsin, I probably should not be so glowing about Marquette, but truly that's, that is the best of the best when it comes to many things. My brother's a dentist graduate from Marquette,
Oh,
and so
very
it's
nice.
like I know the legal program from Marquette is the top notch, and so you definitely excelled there. And I didn't realize that they had kind of you know a supply chain type background as
Yeah,
well.
well, let me plug that too because that is now a top 10 program in the country, I think under Gartner's rankings.
Really?
So yeah, very very strong. And I think when I was there, it was top 15, but that's continued to grow. So a great place to get an education for this sort of thing.
And you're in Milwaukee with Summerfest and all of
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff. Um, Tell me more about kind of the legacies. Is your dad? Was he a driver? Was he what? How did the trucking business get into the Lubenow blood?
Yeah, so he started. I mean, he started long ago, and he'd be better to explain this all to you than me. He's had several stops. He worked at FedEx for good time here at the terminal in Green Bay. Spent some time at ABF and developed a terminal there. And then eventually, shortly after I was born, started his own company, and that has now morphed into a couple companies now under the Lubenow Companies umbrella. So my dad's been doing this really his entire career, and I think we're going 26 or 27 years now that he's been moving this forward. So he's got his background obviously in larger companies, and then said I think I can go and do this on my own and hopefully do it a little bit better. And I think he has.
I've got a grandson who's 8, soon to be 9. Um, I haven't asked him recently, what does, Apollo, what do you want to be when you grow up? When you were my grandson's age, when you were 8, 9, 10, what do you want to be when you wanted to grow up or when you grew up?
Yeah, so I much to the chagrin of my parents and grandparents, I wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to be a fighter
Okay.
pilot. Um, And coincidentally, my grandma always told me you should be a dentist. You should really go and be a dentist.
You got close.
Which,
You got close.
yeah, so didn't quite get there. A couple blocks down the road. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to be a pilot. But the seeds of transportation were there from an early age. I remember when I mean, younger than 8 or 9 even. My parents got me kind of one of those little cars that when you're a toddler, you can run around in.
Yep.
They don't have pedals or anything. And I remember my dad had brought home like mail stickers, that you'd put for a return address with the company's name on it. And I slapped those stickers all over the side of that car. And when I was younger, I would pretend I was hauling loads around for
Huh.
for the family business. So even though I wanted to be a pilot in that moment, I think we knew that the path was there to join the companies.
Cool. A friend of mine who's an attorney told me that one of his professors in law school said that if you love law school, you'll hate practicing law, and if you hate law school, you'll love practicing law. I don't know if you've heard that or what. So which one were you?
Um, I think fortunately I broke the mold, I think, on that one. I loved law school. It was great. It was my favorite scholarly experience of my life above undergrad and high school and all that. But I loved practicing too. It's a fast-paced environment. Get a lot of different challenges daily, and no day is ever the same. So I think very, very different experiences between law school and practice. But they're both great and there are challenges in their own ways. So practicing is definitely more the way that gets you, prepared for the real world. But law school teaches you how to think, which is obviously the key component of any lawyer and I mean any successful business person is that critical thinking skills. So can't complain about either of them really.
Also, there's the arc of your path going from, I'm going to be an Air Force pilot, and then I'm driving my grandparents or your grandparents are spoiling you with an electric car, which I'm very jealous of. I always wanted one of those when I was little. And then law school, practicing law, and then now sitting in a office in the Lubenow building. What kind of how did that how did that path formulate for you?
Yeah, well, I think like even when I was younger, I think really kind of starting in middle school, I remember, the iPhones got popular, and this is a roundabout story, but I remember holding the iPhone and thinking, man, there's a lot of steps to get this single product in somebody's hand. And that's kind of what sparked the whole supply chain kind of interest for me was, wow, think about the glass, the electronics, getting that manufactured in China, shipping it over here, getting it, assembled and distributed. And so that's how I ended up at Marquette wanting to do supply chain. And, obviously had the family companies in the background, but I really thought I was going to be more kind of manufacturing process oriented as I was in school, because of that interest that I had. But then, like I said, I graduated undergrad at 20.
Wow.
And I realized that I had to train a little bit more and get a little bit more experience before I could make an effective transition. So law school was just kind of something that I knew I was capable of. I knew I'd find a good niche within the law. And so I took that opportunity, really, and developed it as much as I could. I graduated from Marquette, clerked for the federal judge that sits here in Green Bay, which is a very coveted position in the field, and then transitioned into private practice where I did a lot of litigation, a lot of business succession planning, labor and employment stuff. And then, I think the impetus that really sparked the desire for the transition was having our first daughter, who just arrived 4 months ago. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, I looked at the business and talked to my dad, and I said, my dad's done such a good job for the last 26, years. And I said, I want to continue that. And, hopefully it's something I can pass down to my kids as well. So, maybe not the traditional arc there, but exactly where I want to be, and, excited to be here.
So what excites you when you think about, you know, being part of Lubenow on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot there, obviously. I think kind of like you alluded to earlier, my dad had started this business with the goal of service first. And we're going to keep that as our mission here, to focus on service. And I think there's so many great things in the wings to enhance service. I think technology is really developing rapidly in this space. You're seeing big changes in transportation management software and systems. There's a lot of exciting opportunities around the technology of the trucks themselves, and I think that's all something that my generation has to focus on, right? Is to kind of stay on the leading edge of software and technology, and using that to promote customer service, and to continue to provide that level of service that we expect from ourselves each and every day. So that's what's exciting to me, is just that continued opportunity for growth, new technology, and trying to get our customers even happier than they already are. So it's just a continuation of what my dad has done for the last 26 years, and hopefully I just get to, if that number is 99.9% now, let's get it to 100%, with some new programs and implementations.
Speaking of your dad, he may not even know like how he's inspired you, but what can you think of a lesson or two that you think about? Hey, I really, old Daryl, man, I tell you what, when he taught me this. I mean, so what is, a couple things you can think of that, that you learn from your dad, either directly or just by osmosis, that you think about frequently?
Yeah, I mean, boy, obviously there's a lot there. There's a lifetime of lessons. I think internally, one of my favorite things that my dad has always said is, if you take care of your employees well, they'll take care of you. And I keep that in mind, every day since I've been here, but, we'll continue to. I think we try to treat our employees, our office employees, our drivers, with the, integrity and respect that they deserve every day, not only through, the paying them well and, benefits and all those sorts of things, but, just saying hello, knowing everybody by name, being flexible with them, understanding that things come up. And, in return, we have some of the hardest working, drivers and employees that go above and beyond every day. So, that's been the biggest lesson that I think I've taken away from watching my dad over the years is, if you want to be successful and you want to promote a solid company, you got to take care of your employees and your drivers first, because ultimately they're the ones that make the business. We
Yep.
we sit here and we drive some strategic decisions, but at the end of the day, it's the drivers and the employees, the dispatchers, that are out there making it all happen. And without them, we don't have anything. So we owe a lot of gratitude to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can see, I bet your dad's like, yep, that's the legacy I want to continue. With that, with a good crew of people, with a good foundation to build on, where do you see Lubenow going in the future? If you're going to look ahead 10 years, would it be more assets, more locations? I mean, just where do you want this baby to grow into?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I think the sky is the limit, which is exciting. I know we've got some concrete plans in the works. I think definitely more assets are on the horizon. And hopefully plenty more drivers to go with it. That's always part of the challenge, is making sure that you've got good drivers to man those assets. But aside from that, we're expanding right now. We're kind of getting a reefer division up and running here. So that's somewhere we're going to expand to pretty quickly. But there's more. I think more locations are coming in the future, both in the state of Wisconsin and hopefully out of the state as well. And there's some opportunities on the horizon to do some warehousing, which we're really interested in. So, I see ourselves as really a full service company already. But I think we're just looking to expand all of those capabilities and hopefully open up a level of service to not only the state of Wisconsin, but around the country that I think people are, recognizing they need. I think it's always been a cost-driven industry, but I think people are starting to realize that service matters. And we're hoping to show people that service is the number one priority, and if you've got good service, then everything sort of falls into place.
And I definitely have seen exactly that from Lubenow. If someone would say, hey, I graduated with a nursing degree, but my dad's got this, trucking company or whatever it might be, or, any advice or guidance that you would just off the top of your head be like, hey, for these legacy trucking companies that are, either going to, yeah, maybe at one point would be absorbed by a bigger company, but so many larger companies are now declaring bankruptcy. So maybe that's not so much an option anymore. So, the idea of continuing the family legacy, any advice as, somebody who's actually gone through this and going through this?
If I had a magic 8 ball, I'd share it. I think it's generational on both ends. I think whether it's the previous generation obviously has to have a plan in place, which I think my dad has been great about. He's gotten this company to such a good place with the general managers that we have that run the distinct entities and the employees that we have. I think that's step one is company has to be well prepared for the transition. I think step two, for the new generation coming in, it's really about knowing what you don't know, especially if you didn't work in this industry prior to joining it. You got to understand that there's a lot of people in your company that are going to know more than you, and probably for a while. And you have to leverage that as best you can, and understand that there's a lot to learn from the people who are out there on the floor. There's things to learn from the drivers. You got to be a sponge in this industry because things move fast. And a lot of drivers have been driving their whole life, and just by virtue of that, they will know a lot more than you about certain things. And you got to be willing to admit that. So I think that's probably the best advice I can have from somebody who kind of like me is coming in from the outside a little bit.
Humility goes a long way. Like any business, I think trucking even maybe more so. A lot is changing. You know, again, your magic 8 ball is still being shipped from some place, so you don't have it yet. But if you were going to just kind of like, what do you think? What do you think the biggest changes are going to be in our industry, in your industry, in the truck transportation industry over the next 5 years or 10 years? What do you guess?
Yeah, it's moving thick and fast. I think there's obviously the headline catching topics of electric trucks, hydrogen powered trucks, self-driving trucks, all these sorts of things that I think are coming closer, but I think they're a little bit further out, especially from a regulation perspective. I think that's down the line. I think that's exciting, but I think there's always going to be a need for good, solid employees and drivers. I think a lot of this stuff is it's in its infancy, despite it, kind of being communicated to us as if it's, coming tomorrow. So all those things are exciting. I think in the near term, I think there's a lot that remains to be seen. I think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of consolidation that was happening, and now there's a lot of struggling that's happening. And I think right now, I think the differentiation is going to be service. I think people are focused on rates, and understandably so, but cargo claims are high. People have service needs. I have a lot of stories of people in the business who are saying that trucks just aren't showing up, and they're pulling pallets off the racking, and nobody's showing up to pick them up, and I think that's frustrating. So the near term is just, let's keep this service going, and then further down the line, let's take a look at some of these technologies that will hopefully expand customer satisfaction. But hopefully, maybe bring some costs down too. So I'm hoping we're going to hit an equilibrium sometime here in the next 5, 10 years where we kind of figure out how this all integrates. And that's obviously on my shoulders to try and work into the company.
Well, the driver is obviously a very, very important link in the chain. That's one thing that I learned in, my journey as I started this back in 2019 was just, it's like how critical the drivers are. And I look at a driver like I would look at a veteran. I'm like, thank you for your service. I would not have this shirt, or my coffee or anything that's touching me right now if a driver wasn't involved. That being said, like, what do you think from the driver's perspective are the biggest issues facing them in, let's say, the immediate term over the next, few years? I mean, you've got regulation, you've got rates, pay. What do you think the things are that the drivers should really focus on?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think regulation is a constantly changing beast, right? I mean, I know that as a lawyer, things change faster than sometimes attorneys in private practice can keep up with. You try and stay up, to date as you can, but things come thick and fast from a regulatory perspective. So I think it's important to have, wherever you're driving, somebody that understands that. I know here we have a fantastic safety director that keeps these guys up to date on exactly what's going on and what to look out for. I think pay is obviously always a key consideration. And I think we compensate our drivers here very well and treat them very well. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier, that we take care of the drivers so that they take care of our customers. So I think those two things are key. It's my hope that things will continue to trend positively in that direction. And in the long term, I think there's a lot. I think obviously the most headline catching one is the idea of autonomous trucks. But I think even if that does come to fruition at some point in the future, I think there's always going to be a need for good drivers. I think even when automation becomes a real thing, it's going to be very simple straight line highways. I think that's about as much as the federal government is going to allow for quite some time. So maybe it cuts out some of that longer haul, straight flat roads, but I think drivers are here to stay. And I think that's all for the better. I get cost is important, but we need these drivers to make sure that the freight is safe, to make sure that it can get properly backed into a dock. I have yet to see a solid visualization of a self-driving truck putting a trailer in a dock perfectly. So I think they're here to stay, and we want them to stay. The drivers, again, like you said, they're what make this business what it is. They are the backbone of not only the business but really the economy. And without them, we don't have a supply chain. So I think they're going to be around. We want them to stick around, and we're going to keep taking good care of them.
So, you talked about autonomous trucks, and I kind of, I agree. I think I could see autonomous trucks kind of turning semis into somewhat of a locomotive where you might have, a lead driver and a few trucks following behind them, or the spotter trucks or the yard dogs that are moving trailers around, and that kind of makes sense. But I still think, the human element needs to be there, and there's a lot with, the driver is responsible for that I wasn't aware of until I got involved with this, securing a load and, having the right, all of that, just having the right accessories to strap things down or whatever it might be. And so there's more to it than just holding a steering wheel. Um, and but that being said, hydrogen and electric and regulation, et cetera, et cetera. So we know what may change, and change is inevitable. But what do you think, will always stay the same in our industry?
Yeah, I do think it's the human touch, and I hate to beat a dead horse. It's the service and it's the human touch. I think that's no matter how far we get advanced in automation, it's key to keep relationships, and to keep that human interaction in our business. Like you said, without the drivers just securing the loads, seals, all of the things they do, PODs, bills of lading, all of this stuff that they handle. that somebody from the outside doesn't necessarily see. So that desire to have a good connection with everybody that you're working with, and to know that if you pick up the phone, someone's going to be there. I think that's crucial. And I'm sure some people might be willing to discard that, but I know that we won't. We think that that's a strength of ours, is building those relationships and connections, not only with our employees but with our customers and with the community. And I think that's here to stay, no matter how much people might want to try and take it away.
Yeah, and it just seems like just such a strong cultural foundation. And you can have all the best processes and the fastest computers and the nicest office equipment in the world and the shiniest forklifts, but if your culture stinks, everything stinks. And that's the Lubenow culture has been good. And one of the things that is interesting, I wasn't aware of, is the fact that Lubenow has never laid off an employee. That's rare in your industry, because it just seems like, I've got some friends, a mechanic I work with, his wife works for a large logistics company, and they're just, every day they're like, oh, guess who got fired today? It's just people just out of the blue, right? This guy's gone, this guy's gone. So that's rare in this industry. How have you made that possible? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to that thing I said about my dad. You take care of your employees and they'll take care of you. We know how important these drivers and these employees are, and we know that this industry is, I mean, it's peaks and valleys, and sometimes the valleys are long and sometimes the peaks are short. But at the end of the day, I mean, again, you need all of these employees and all of these drivers to have a successful business. And if we were laying off drivers and employees every time, the economy got bad, we would lose all of the great talent that we've built up. And so, for us, it's about keeping the drivers, keeping the employees employed and happy, and understanding that we're here not just to make money. We're here because we have a responsibility to provide for everybody that's under this company, and we take that very seriously. And we're going to continue to take it seriously. So again, it's a culture thing. We know we're not here without all of these people, and so we're not going to let them go just because there's a downturn.
Yeah, that's awesome, because there's nothing worse than going into work going, am I going to have to find a cardboard box and pack up my desk today every single day? Um, and so another interesting thing about your dispatch team is that your team includes former drivers. And, so tell me why that's the cool thing. And, how does it make a difference to your customers, your shippers, your receivers, your drivers? I mean, having people that were behind the wheel for a while actually on the phone doing dispatching, um, in your experience, what difference does that make?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's invaluable. I think for the drivers, obviously, they're talking to somebody who knows what they're going through, right? They can understand the frustrations of a certain request, or how to make a request a little bit easier. So I think for the drivers, it's great. I think for the customers, again, they understand, well, we got to think about, do we need a delivery appointment? Sometimes that's not always very clear. And even when you don't have an answer to that, you make the phone call, that, you might need a delivery appointment. You don't want to be stuck at that guard gate, saying, well, who are you here for? Why are you here? And then you got to go sit, somewhere else for a little bit while somebody figures it out. So it makes everything flow a lot better, to have somebody who knows what it's like on the ground. It's a job that you can certainly learn to do without that experience, but I think understanding that what you're seeing come through the phone, come through email, and being able to kind of visualize it as it's going to play out, in the yard, is very helpful to make sure that things run smoothly. And when somebody calls with a problem, they know exactly what they're talking about. They're not like, I've never seen this before. Tell me about what's going on. They just intuitively understand what's happening out there, and I think that's just the best for everybody.
I can see that too. Other companies that would be, like Lubin, other trucking companies, what do you think the biggest mistakes that you would feel that they could make?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I think it's just communication. I think and that's broad, but I really do think it's all about having an open line of communication. Being responsive is key. I think that's one thing that our driver managers, our dispatchers do so great is, whether it's a quote, I mean, it's a quote in under 15 minutes, whether it's, a response to a question about where a shipment is, can we get a POD for something that happened, a year ago? I mean, we get all of that back in minutes. And I think not being responsive can lead to a lot of problems because, I mean, your customers need information when they need it, and you have to be able to get it to them. And sometimes it's not a request that a computer can handle. It's not something that you can just log into a portal and finish it without a point of contact. You need somebody to really go look for it. And so I think communication and how quickly and how effectively you communicate is vital in this business.
So it sounds like, automation can benefit both on the road and in the office, but it can't replace just good, solid human beings,
Yeah, I,
when need be.
right. And accuracy is important, and technology is still developing, and um, you can wish that it's 100% accurate all the time, but you can't always guarantee it. So it's nice to have a set of human eyes on things to make sure the right information is getting out.
What would be your, you know, a piece of advice you would give to somebody who wants to, maybe go from, being a one truck owner operator to getting a couple more trucks and kind of starting a, their own trucking company. Um, and, uh, so what, if someone's going to say, hey, I'm starting a trucking company. What do what advice do you have for me based on, your experience and your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I think people are key. If you're looking at, to expand into more trucks, whether it's trucks that you own and you're going to put somebody else in it, or you're kind of, going with it, going in on it with somebody else, you got to start with good people. You can't grow at the expense of your service, or your safety. So good drivers are key. Safe drivers, people you can trust, people are going to be there on time, deliver on time, no damage. I think that's the biggest thing. You got to start from a solid foundation, and you can't grow too quickly. I think we've seen a lot. I think like you referenced, some of these larger companies that are shutting down, they've grown at an exponential rate, and you find out that, yeah, maybe we should have pulled back a little bit. So start with a solid foundation, pick good people, pick good drivers. You want to work with good people too, is just a general thing. Good relationships in an office and in a business go a long way. And so long as you guys can, resolve conflicts, work together, that's a really big thing too. And that's something that I love about here is, everybody gets along, everybody knows how to work together, and that makes things a lot smoother, especially through growth, because growth always comes with challenges.
Well, I know that one of the things that Lubenow is known for is not just taking care of the people within the Lubenow family, but also giving back to the community. And one of the things that you do is the Hauling for Good campaign. So tell me about the Hauling for Good campaign and what's it all about?
Yeah, so here at the company, we proudly refer to ourselves as the haul around champions, and a nice little play on words. Not only for our employees, for our customers, but then for our community as well. And so that's what hauling good for good is all about, is making that impact on the community and giving back. So for every mile that's driven by our drivers, we give a percentage of those miles driven to a foundation. For the last few years, it's been the Littlest Tumor Foundation, which goes to address a very sort of lesser known genetic disorder that can cause small tumors essentially to grow all across the body. And sometimes they can be painful, they can cause mobility issues, they can cause all sorts of problems. And since it's a not so common issue, it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. So we've partnered with them for the last few years, and I think we've done some real good for them, and hoping to help research for a cure and helping to kind of fund their operations. So it's just one more thing that we love to do here is to give back to the community, because again, in an even broader sense, without the community we wouldn't be here. So it's a real culture of just recognizing that we're built on this community, we're built on our employees, and our employees love to give back as well, which is another thing that makes us so great.
Do you think other, trucking companies that go, that's interesting, I would like to help? Any advice to someone who's like, I'd like to actually start to be a, kind of a all around champion as well. Any advice for, cultural guidance or whatever, the idea being like we want to contribute back to the community. What would you tell a trucking company is asking you about that?
Yeah. Well, I'd say if you want to be a all around champion, you should come to Lubenow Companies. That's what I'd say first and foremost.
Awesome.
But it's sometimes giving. I think giving back can feel daunting, right? There's a lot of causes out there. You're just kind of thinking about where do I go? Where do I put my time? Where do I put my resources? And I think you just got to start with something that's close to you. There's so many great things, and you don't have to be over specific. If it's something as broad and well known as something like the YMCA, dedicate some time to it, whether it's your own hours, whether it's some funds, if you're interested in certain religious organizations or, if you've got a very specific thing near and dear to your heart, just reach out, again, whether it's just donating a percentage of what you make, whether it's volunteering your time, people want help. That's what nonprofit causes are there for. They want to help the community. And I think it just takes that first step of reaching out and saying, how can I help? And from there, I think things really fall into place. So I would say don't overthink it. Find something you're passionate about, give back, and again, I think it's part of our responsibility in the community to recognize that we've been fortunate to be where we are, and we have to give back to sort of respect how much this community has carried us up.
That's awesome. So what's next for you guys? What's next for Lubenow? Big plans, innovations, etc.
Big. I mean, there's big plans on the horizon. I don't want to give it away too soon. I think in good time we'll hopefully have some exciting news for everybody. But like I said, we've got some smaller but still very important things. Like I said, we're building out our reefer fleet, and just trying to continue to grow in assets and drivers. So we do all sorts of things. We run full vans all across the country. We have, local work where you're home every night. If you want to be gone for one night, two nights, and be back, I'll just say we're looking for good, solid drivers that are interested in being part of a good team, and one that's dedicated to service and dedicated to giving back. And, again, we need those drivers to grow, and we want people who are along for the ride with us. So if you're looking to join a growing company and give back and do good in the process, I think we're a really great option for people out there.
The And I guess everybody, wants to think that they're different or better, whatever it might be. But if you're going to kind of just in a couple of sentences say and I think I might know the answer to this, but what makes Lubenow different from the rest? And, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think you hit it earlier with its culture. We're here not just for ourselves. We're here for our employees. We're here for our community. We're here for our customers. And at every touch point along the way, at every interaction, we want to make that clear. So you're here at Lubenow. You're not just a number. You're a name to us. If you're a driver, you're an integral part of this team. And we want to make sure you feel that way every day. And all of our doors are always open, which is great. Our drivers are constantly talking to our safety manager, talking to our general managers. I'm open to talk to anybody at any time. So there's real good lines of communication. And I think we just offer good flexibility. And I think for drivers that are maybe a little disillusioned with some of the conditions out there, this is a good place to come and, to discover why you started driving again, to enjoy the job, to enjoy getting out on the road, and to just feel like what it was to hop in the truck for the first time and discover that freedom. I think this is a good place to do that.
That's awesome. And I think, it's, based upon my experience in Lubenow, I would agree. And, as a Lubenow, customer, small, tiny, tiny, tiny customer, but I would say anybody who is curious about whether that's true or not, give you guys a try, because, it's the proof's in the pudding, as they say. So tell me more about where people can, learn about Lubenow, and also, more importantly, to help people learn more about the Hauling for Good campaign. Where do we find all of that stuff?
Absolutely. So you could find us at lubenowcompanies.com. There we've got everything you need to know about hauling for good. If you're interested in a driving position, there's information there. If you're interested in joining the office team, there's some information there. And then if you're looking for a quote or you're looking for some information on freight, you can email quotes at lubenowexp.com. Like I said, we'll get back to you within 15 minutes on a quote for your freight. And I'm always around as well. Feel free to give us a call and happy to talk about anything that we can help you out with.
Well, I tell you, this is exciting. The I mean, I can only imagine, combining, what you learned in, at Marquette with, both of these things. It's going to be, I think it's going to bear um, a lot of fruit here, and I'm excited to see how this, how you fit in as you grow with the trucking industry. Um, but it was great learning more about you and your history. Um, and um, of course, we are, the DPF guys as far as any of that emissions stuff, but that's all boring under the truck things. I'm more interested in what goes on up inside the cab and how to keep those people happy and successful. So, thank you very much. And I think we're done.